Will he apologise to the victims of the rapists, sexual predators and paedophiles that he is planning to release early?
3 times. He was asked 3 times. James cleverly stood in for Kemi Badenoch at the dispatch box. His target was not a policy announcement, not a leaked document, not a new statistic. It was a single question. Would David Lammy say sorry to the people directly harmed by his early release scheme? The answer tells you everything about where this government actually thinks it stands on this. Subscribe if you're not already. More of this coming.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to welcome the Shadow Housing Secretary to the dispatch box. He, of course, could have been doing this job every week if he were better with numbers. Under the Tories, they closed 23 prisons. 23. Gloucester, closed. Shrewsbury, closed. Portsmouth, closed. Holloway, closed. Northallerton, closed. And what are they now? A block of flats. That's why we have to have an early release scheme. That's why we passed the Sentencing Act.
Lammy's first response is a joke about Cleverly's ability to count. That is the opener. Someone has just asked him to apologise to victims of sex offenders, and his first instinct is to reach for a gag. The 23 prisons line is real. The Conservatives did close prisons under austerity. The system was under strain before this government took office. That context is genuinely important, and it gets buried under what follows. Because here is the honest read, that context does not answer the question. It explains why a release scheme exists. It does not explain why 50,000 people, including serious violent offenders and sex offenders, were released early. Those are 2 different things. Lammy treats them as the same thing. They are not.
Mr. Speaker, he makes a joke about the use of figures. Let me give him a figure. 50,000 prisoners released early in just 2 years on his watch. And I am genuinely shocked, Mr. Speaker, that when given the opportunity to apologise to victims, he very publicly failed to do so.
Cleverly is right about the failure to apologise. He's also selectively right about the numbers, which we will get to. But in this moment, the camera is on Lammy. And Lammy has just been handed a second opportunity to say, some of what happened was wrong, and I am sorry to the people it harmed. He does not take it. That is the entire argument. Every time the apology question comes up, it gets redirected. Watch.
He knows that while he was Home Secretary, they had an early release scheme that set out 10,000 offenders, 10,000 under his... They had 6 schemes within a year.
This is Lammy's actual argument, and it deserves to be taken seriously, because it is not wrong. The Conservative government did run early release schemes. James Cleverly, as Home Secretary, oversaw one of them. The idea that the Tories were custodians of a tough, principled approach to sentencing is, historically speaking, fiction.
Talks about 10,000 early release over 14 years of Conservative government. They have released 50,000 in 2 years. And he knows it's wrong. He is a good man. He must know that it is wrong to release 5,000 serious criminals. So I give him another chance. Will he apologise to the country for his abject failure at keeping prisoners in prison where they belong?
Yeah. The argument you will hear, and it is Lammy's argument, is we inherited the problem. They built a system that made this necessary. The hypocrisy is theirs. The problem is that is not an answer to the question of whether serious offenders should have been released early. You can hold both things at once. The Tories left the prison system in crisis, and the government's response to that crisis may have gone further than it should have. One does not cancel the other. Lammy is using the first fact to avoid engaging with the second. In my view, that is deliberate, because engaging with the second requires acknowledging that something went wrong. The 5,000 figure Cleverly cites, serious criminals released, is the number that actually matters here, not 50,000. The scheme was designed with categories. The question is whether those categories were drawn in the right place. That is a defensible policy debate. But Lammy is not having that debate. He is having a different one. about who is to blame for the state of the prison estate, which is telling. When you have a strong defense, you use it. When you do not, you attack the questioner. What this means for the people actually affected. If you or someone in your family was a victim of a sex offender, a violent offender, someone who got out under the scheme, you watched this exchange, and the Justice Secretary did not once look toward you. 3 chances. Here is what the third one looked like.
Mr. Speaker, he will look back on this exchange, and I think he will be shocked by how this is coming across. No apology to the victims, no guarantee that paedophiles and rapists will not be released early.
Cleverly is doing something specific here. He is not predicting that Lammy will change his mind. He is predicting that Lammy will regret this exchange when he watches it back. That is a different kind of argument. It is a bet that the optics here are so bad that even the minister will eventually feel it. And here is the thing. He might be right, but not for the reason Cleverly thinks. The government did not refuse to apologize because they do not care about victims. I do not believe that. I think they refused because their lawyers, their political advisors, every person in the grid around them told them, do not say sorry, because sorry is an admission, and an admission opens the door to something worse. That calculation is understandable. It is also, in this instance, exactly wrong, because the public does not hear the legal calculus. The public hears a minister being asked to say sorry to victims of sex offenders, and watching him change the subject. Twice, 3 times, the government passed the Sentencing Act in 2024, the legislation that underpins this scheme, with the stated aim of managing prison capacity while protecting the public from the most dangerous offenders. That is not an unreasonable aim, but the execution, specifically who ended up falling into the early release categories, has become a political liability precisely because the government will not engage with the question of whether the lines were drawn correctly. What strikes me about this exchange is the missed opportunity. A sentence, one sentence, acknowledging that some releases caused harm and that victims deserve better, would have been politically unassailable. Nobody was asking Lammy to repeal the entire scheme. They were asking him to say, I hear you. He did not say it. And the reasons why, the calculation behind the non-apology, tell you more about how this government operates than the policy itself does. The story here is not that the Conservatives are suddenly the victims' champions. They are not, and their record says so. The story is that when a government refuses to say a single word of acknowledgement to the people harmed by its decisions, it reveals something about who it believes it is accountable to. And right now, the answer does not seem to be the people who were hurt. This connects to a wider pattern around this government's approach to accountability, which I have covered in another video about a very different policy area where the same reflex shows up. I'll put it at the end of this one. If you thought refusing to apologize was just optics, watch what the apology refusal unlocks next.